Alright, what's going on, everyone? Today, as you saw in the thumbnail, just wanted to go over Kakashi versus Gojo, and this is a matchup I've seen talked about, debated, asked for, pretty much since Gojo's been introduced in the JJK anime. Not so much the manga. Around the time the anime came out, I started seeing this matchup get talked about a lot more, and I kind of get it. You know, you've got the white-haired sensei with the mask kind of deal going, so I guess I can see the appeal now. I guess, just to break it off early, the way I want to go into this is, the fair and honest scaling between the two, how the fight would more than likely go. That's what everyone's here for. And then at the end, just going crazy with Wank for both characters and seeing who comes out on top. Yeah, and then before we jump into that, just for, for all the followers, all the subs, all you guys, I do enjoy hanging out with you. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing my first Twitch stream. Nothing too exciting, just testing to see if I can get it all working correctly. Doing some games, Q&A, live scaling, that type of deal. But yeah, long intros aside, when we start with this matchup, this is another one of those ones where I think it's important to go over the in-character styles for both these characters, because obviously I want to talk about who wins in character. No bloodlusted, no extra circumstances. Who really wins if they fight. So first, Kakashi is an extremely focused and clever fighter, very careful as well, and his abilities match the style, making it pretty good comp. For example, the Sharingan has precog, genjutsu, he also has clone substitution. All three of these are going to be extremely helpful for someone as clever as Kakashi, and we'll go over why a little bit later. Even some of his bigger moves like Kamui, Chidori variants, they're one-shot moves that require, a little bit of setup, but at the end of the day, they're one-shot moves for the most part, and that's something that, a thoughtful fighter can really utilize. Now, Gojo, on the other hand, is a little more complex, and he's not necessarily any one type of fighter consistently. We see him sometimes being insta-killer, sometimes he's trolling, like in his Jogo fight. Sometimes he's careful and thoughtful like Kakashi, but the most dangerous fighting style for him is his emotional and risky fighting style that we see in the Shibuya incident. Luckily, he's likely not going to be like this against Kakashi. Gojo likely fights Kakashi as his careful and thoughtful self, which at first glance would seem like a disadvantage for Gojo. However, it's not. Gojo's ability kit works pretty well with this sort of fighting style as well, but more on that later. So just to sum up, Gojo and Kakashi are both going into this match clever, thoughtful, careful. Neither one's really getting a big advantage from their fighting style, so we have to chalk this up mostly to abilities here. And I mean, when we're talking about their abilities, they'd interact with each other really strangely, and I mean, they're both going to have counters to each other. So first we have Gojo, who comes into this fight with a lot: Six Eyes, Limitless abilities, Reverse Curse Technique Regeneration, Domain Expansion. Just to start, Six Eyes is pretty complex, but for now, just understand that it allows Gojo to spam his abilities without tiring out. It also allows him to think incredibly fast and see most things coming that have any form of energy attached to them. And using his Limitless abilities in, any helpful capacity requires Six Eyes, so I guess that's an added benefit. He can use his own abilities. Now, these Limitless abilities are his main weapon. First we have, Lapse Blue, Red Glow. They're pretty similar to Pain's Almighty Push and Pull, but they're a lot more powerful. Number one, because there's no cooldown, he could spam them, infinitely basically. And these don't work off gravity like Pain's. They're basically bringing in new space into existence, or they're removing it from existence. And that means they have a much higher destructive capacity than Pain's Six Paths abilities. And Gojo also comes into this fight with his neutral Limitless, and what this is a barrier. And this barrier is constantly active, basically 24/7 as a passive ability. And I know that sounds kind of broken, and the devs ought to nerf this one, but, I didn't write it. But yeah, for those that don't know, this barrier manipulates the laws of physics around Gojo, essentially slowing down anything that approaches him, but slows it down infinitely. Therefore, you would never reach him, right? And you would need a very specific type of targeting with your abilities, and I guess if you don't have the hacks to get through it, you just need speed that is beyond infinite to get through this barrier. And that's if you can get Gojo to stand still, which is hard to get him to do, as he also has a form of teleportation. Now, all we really know about this is that it is teleportation. That's what's stated, it's what's shown. However, we don't know if he's using Lapse Blue to teleport by removing space between himself and his target, or if he's reversing his neutral Limitless to instantly and infinitely accelerate himself, or if he's been trained by Minato. But we do know that he can teleport, and even if you manage to, catch Quick Master Flex, despite all this, he has another ability called Reverse Curse Technique. Now, this specific ability allows Gojo to regen beyond a cellular level, and even regrow, restore destroyed organs like his heart, his throat, his brain, and that's not just scaling, these are things he's restored on panel, right? And this ability also constantly replenishes his already absurd levels of cursed energy and stamina, and this is what allows him to spam all but one of his abilities, that being his Immeasurable Void domain expansion. Since Gojo's Immeasurable Void is the second most deadly ability in the entire verse, it makes sense that this is an ability the author had to balance out somehow by making it to where he can really only use it once a day. Now, with this ability, Gojo casts, another ultra-powerful barrier around both himself and his opponent. And inside this barrier, he not only gets an amp and guaranteed hit to all of his regular abilities, he also gets the ability to force infinite information into the mind of his opponent. This is really bad for Kakashi because this would be infinitely worse, literally, than anything in the Naruto-verse, worse than Tsukuyomi. It's pretty much an instant win condition for Gojo. Again, if this sounds broken, that's because it is. After all, this is the second most deadly ability in the verse, second only to an ability called Hollow Purple, which Gojo also has. Now, Hollow Purple is basically just existence erasure through the manipulation of imaginary mass. Gojo makes a giant purple ball and throws it at whatever he feels like uninstalling from existence. And that's how simple this is. Now that we've kind of thoroughly examined the full length, girth, circumference of Gojo's massive arsenal, let's look at how Kakashi goes about handling this. First off, his Sharingan, the Genjutsu, the copy, and the precog, they're all pretty much invalidated from the beginning, thanks to the nature of Gojo's abilities, like the Limitless Barrier not allowing energy inside of it, pretty much invalidates Genjutsu. On top of that, the lack of physical involvement needed from Gojo, as most of his abilities, they work on Gojo's reaction speed, and he just needs to will most of these things into existence. However, I guess Kakashi might be able to see Gojo's energy kind of churning in preparation for his attacks, as he definitely has a speed advantage in this fight as far as combat speed, but we'll kind of get into that later. Also, as a side note, Kakashi wouldn't be able to copy Gojo's Limitless abilities for two reasons. Now, number one, the Sharingan can only copy Ninjutsu, Taijutsu, Genjutsu from the Naruto-verse, and curse techniques are nowhere near similar enough to be copied this way. Number two, it's stated that the Sharingan can't copy what's called Kekkei Genkai, or the inherited family bloodline abilities in Naruto. For example, Sasuke can't just copy the Byakugan and solo the Chunin exams. This is the most important reason why Kakashi can't copy Limitless, as Limitless, number one, requires 6 eyes to use properly. And Limitless and 6 eyes are both genetic abilities passed down through Gojo's clan, similar to the Kekkei Genkai in Naruto. So, if we're using fair scaling here, we can put Gojo's physical combat speed at about Mach 1 to Mach 2. Based on Gojo's underground train feat, this is definitely a low ball, but it doesn't really matter, because Gojo's reaction speed is all that counts, since his reaction speed dictates how fast his abilities activate. Kakashi, on the other hand, much faster than Mach 1 or 2, he's at least a lightning timer. Now, as far as reaction speed, Gojo is massively faster than light, based on his processing of all possibilities surrounding 3 years of information. This again is a low ball, but again it doesn't matter. Now let's talk about how Kakashi actually fights Gojo here. Kakashi, from the beginning, would have had his Sharingan out and likely would see at least the cursed energy surrounding Gojo and piece together that it is a barrier, but Kakashi would have no way of knowing what sort of barrier this is. With this information, Kakashi would likely substitute himself with a clone and have the clone engage Gojo while he observed and tried to learn the mechanics of this barrier. And this is actually a really good idea. It would eventually lead Kakashi to use Kamui in an attempt to get through the barrier. Well, I guess this would be a good idea if he wasn't fighting Gojo. Substitution Jutsu is not effective against Gojo, and neither is clone scapegoating. And for those unfamiliar with this term, in the Naruto-verse, certain characters tend to replace themselves with clones and allow the clones to take the biggest L's for them so that they can stay alive and kind of observe, what their opponents can do or bait out some of their bigger attacks. Now, most of them, Kakashi especially, are smart enough to also suppress their chakra during this maneuver so their enemy can't sense them while they're hiding nearby and fighting, or having their clone fight for them. This doesn't work on someone with the 6 eyes, though. This is shown to us in a flashback in which a 6-year-old Gojo was able to detect the presence of somebody with absolutely zero cursed energy. And as every Naruto fan has screamed to me since I've mentioned Naruto, chakra and cursed energy are so similar that they should be able to interact. So if that's the argument we're going to go with here, that means that unless Kakashi can basically put himself to 0 chakra, he will be caught by Gojo. In fact, even if he did put himself to 0 chakra, Gojo would still detect his presence, right? And just as a side note, Kakashi absolutely can't do this, because if you were to put your chakra reserves to 0, you would die. But whatever. So, in the interest of time, let's rapid fire Kakashi's potential moves here. Shadow clones. If Kakashi had 100 clones, it would not put a dent in his problem here. More clones is more L's at this point. Genjutsu. Genjutsu works by injecting your chakra into someone. Chakra doesn't move fast enough to get through Gojo's barrier, so Kakashi's not injecting shit. Summoning Jutsu. No. Every single summoning Kakashi has, no. They'd encounter the same problems he is, and would deal with them worse. They would literally just get in his way until they died. Chidori, it's stopped by Gojo's barrier, and it's basically a lightning punch that isn't fast enough to get through it. On top of that, he would just int. He would literally run into Gojo, slow down and just be in range for Gojo to kick him in the nuts or something. This would not be a good idea. Fire style, get out of here. So, alright, enough memeing around. I've joked enough. From here, I actually do want to discuss, Kakashi actually having some kind of response to Gojo. He does actually have some smoke to give here. And as some of you may know, Kakashi has Kamui, and we are specifically talking about the double Mangekyo Sharingan Kakashi here. And this is the Kakashi that has both his version of Kamui as well as Obito's. Now let's just get this out of the way. Kamui bypasses Gojo's barrier. The main reason for this is that Kamui simply spawns on the target, granting the sort of targeting it needs to actually get past the limitless barrier that we were talking about earlier. But this still isn't enough. As most of you probably know, Obito fought Minato during the Nine Tails invasion. But what a lot of people seem to forget is that Obito tagged Minato with Kamui, but Minato survived and won the fight. Why? Because he can teleport. And as we went over earlier, Gojo can teleport in similar fashion to Minato, as Minato only needs his reaction speed to teleport using Flying Raijin, just as Gojo does. As we went over earlier, Gojo's limitless abilities are literally the creation, erasure, and manipulation of the space around him and the laws of physics as well. With specific emphasis on space and distance, not only do all of Gojo's abilities ignore the laws of space and distance, he can even exaggerate these laws if he wanted to, and create logical and physical contradictions, as we see here in this panel when he explains how his lapse blue works, by creating impossible scenarios such as, having -1 apples. This means Gojo's teleportation is even more broken, and even better equipped to counter Kamui than Minato's. Whether Kakashi uses, Susanoo Kamui, close range Kamui, head kick Kamui, it doesn't matter. It's gonna fail, right? And as we saw, Kakashi doesn't have endless stamina to fight Gojo forever. This essentially ends after Kakashi tires himself out by throwing everything in the kitchen sink at Gojo. Even if we argue he can do this for days on end, it doesn't matter. Gojo can do this indefinitely, and has more than a couple ways to take out Kakashi even before he's fatigued, as we went over earlier. So, to sum up, Gojo on top. Now, I did promise something else here. We want to look at what happens if you wank both these characters. So to start with Kakashi, he took on Kaguya, who was stronger than Madara. Madara, since we're wanking here, Madara said he can destroy all things in existence, meaning that he is high hyperversal. Screw it. You know what, let's just put him at outer versal, because Kaguya is even stronger, and she transcends dimensions, meaning that she is outer versal. Kakashi was putting work on her. Therefore, he's outer versal. If you're outer versal, obviously your speed is up there as well, doesn't matter. Basically, Kakashi is on that level, right? Gojo, he is high complex multiversal because he can manipulate the laws of physics and the natural laws of any existence. So not even hyperversal, he'd be omniversal. However, omniversal is not on the same level as, outer versal. So in this case, Kakashi wins. If I wank them and ignore all sense of decency and, reasoning in my scaling, fine, Kakashi wins. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. But yeah, if you guys enjoy this, feel free to leave a like. Sorry that the uploads have been all over the place. I'm just testing out kind of the scheduling for these, seeing kind of what you guys like. Let me know in the comments anything you think about this. Tell me how wrong I am. I always love seeing those. But other than that, be safe. Take it easy.